everyone, and welcome to Super Simple Excel Tutorials. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use various count formulas in Excel. This is a beginner's tutorial. If you're more advanced, please check out my intermediate and advanced videos on count formulas, which are linked in the description below. For this tutorial, I'm going to use a data set that I created for a simple household budget. First, let's count how many cells are occupied, meaning how many cells are not completely blank. You'll want to click directly into the cell where you want your formula's result to appear. For my example, I want my result to appear in cell G14. So I will start by positioning my mouse cursor over G14 and clicking into that cell. Make sure you don't click on any of these borders. Get used to clicking directly in the middle of a cell. Now, let's manually type our formula right into the formula bar. If you're not familiar with the formula bar, the ribbon tabs, or the quick access toolbar, you're going to want to check out my Excel Basics video. So I will link that down in the description below. Let's go ahead and start typing in our formula in the formula bar. We start the same way we start all functions, with an equal sign. To have Excel count how many cells are occupied or not completely blank, we type the letters C-O-U-N-T-A, count A. Capitalization doesn't matter here, so you can type in lowercase or uppercase and the function is going to work just fine. You'll notice that as you begin to type, Excel will try to help you by giving you a list of functions that include the letters you've typed so far. In this video, we're going to ignore this list and continue to type our function manually. Now that we've typed out the full name of the function we wish to perform, we must type an open parentheses. As with all formulas, inside of the parentheses, we'll need to type the parameters that are specific to the function we are performing. Excel will give us hints as to what needs to be entered here as parameters. You can see that the count A function simply asks for some values or a range of cells to evaluate. I'm going to select the entire range of cells that I want Excel to look at. To do this, I will click into the first cell of my range, that happens to be cell A1 in this example, and I will hold down the mouse button while I drag the mouse cursor all the way to the very last cell I want included in my range. In this example, the last cell of my desired range is D12. Now I'll let the mouse button go, and you'll see that the range of cells we've just highlighted are now within parentheses of our count A formula. From here, all you have to do is close parentheses and hit enter. Now you'll see that our count A result has appeared in cell G14. The result of 41 tells us that out of all the cells in our range, 41 of them are occupied. In other words, 41 cells are not completely blank. They have some value in them. In order to see this better, let's look at the cells shaded. Now, let's count how many cells are in fact completely blank. Completely blank cells are cells with no value in them. No text value, no simple space, literally nothing at all is in a completely blank cell. Be very careful here because a cell can look blank but not actually be blank for a number of reasons. A few of the most common reasons why a cell could look blank but not be blank are if the color of the text in the cell matches the background fill of the cell, like this. It can also look blank but not be blank if there are just spaces in the cell. So if you click into a cell and hit spacebar, then enter, this cell is going to look blank but is not going to be blank because of any space that's within it. Another reason why it could look blank is if there's a formula in the cell and the result of the formula looks blank. That's a little bit more advanced and something I go over in some of my intermediate and advanced videos. So if you want to know how that can happen, you should definitely check those out. The cells in my data set here that look blank actually are completely blank. So they are perfect for this next count function. I want this next result to appear in cell G15. So I will click into that cell, then start typing the formula in the formula bar. As usual, start with an equal sign. Then, to have Excel count how many cells are completely blank, we'll type the words count blank with no space in between. Now open parentheses, and you can see Excel giving us hints again as to what needs to be entered as parameters. The count blank function simply asks for a range of cells to evaluate. So let's go ahead and select the range of our entire data set just as we did before, starting at cell A1 and ending at cell D12. Close parentheses and hit enter. The result here is 7, meaning that out of all the cells in our selected range, 7 of them are completely blank. This next formula is not technically a count formula, but the result will tell us how many total cells are in our selected range. This is going to count all of the cells in the range we select, whether they are blank or not. I want this result to appear in cell G16, so I will click into that cell and start typing the formula in the formula bar. You already know that we start with an equal sign. Then, to have Excel count how many total cells are in a specific range, including blanks and non-blanks, we'll multiply a rows formula by a columns formula. So type the word rows, R-O-W-S, and open parentheses. Select your entire range and close parentheses. Now type an asterisk to multiply. Type the word columns, C-O-L-U-M-N-S, and open parentheses. Select the same exact range again and close parentheses. Now hit enter to see the result. Math nerds like me will notice that this works a lot like the most basic formula for area, length times width. The result here is 48, meaning that there are 48 cells in our selected range. This is inclusive of blanks and non-blanks, and this makes sense because previously we calculated 41 non-blank cells and 7 blank cells. Now that you're getting the hang of this, let's quickly perform a few more count functions. To count how many cells in a range have numerical values, we'll use the count formula. Equal sign, C-O-U-N-T, open parentheses, select your range, close parentheses, hit enter. The result of 27 is represented by these cells shaded here in light blue. To count how many cells in a range have text values, we'll use a combination of the sum, if, and is text formulas. This one is more of an intermediate skill level, so I'll go through it quickly here, but you can check out my intermediate video that goes over nesting and combining formulas, which is linked in the description below. In the formula bar, type equal sign, sum, open parentheses, if, open parentheses, is text, open parentheses. Select your range, close parentheses, comma 1, comma 0, close parentheses again, and hit enter. The result of 14 is represented by the cells shaded here in purple. If you want to have Excel only count cells that meet certain criteria set by you, you could do something like this. To count how many times the spent amount was exactly equal to the budgeted amount, let's count how many times the value in the variance column is 0. To do this, click in the formula bar, type equal sign, count if with no space between words, open parentheses, select your range. For this example, our range is just going to be the variance amounts that correspond to the expenses only, so D4 through D11. Now we have to type a comma before we can enter the criteria, and our criteria here is just going to be the number 0. Now close parentheses and hit enter. This formula says count if anything in this range is 0. The result is 2, and we can see that this makes sense because there were only 2 instances where our amount spent was exactly equal to the amount budgeted, and that was for rent/mortgage and renters/homeowners insurance. Now, let's count how many times the spent amount was not equal to the budgeted amount. In other words, how many times the value in the variance column was not 0. Here we are going to use a count if s formula, which is not technically necessary, but for the sake of showing an example, we'll do it here. The difference between a count if formula and a count if s formula is that the count if formula can evaluate one range of cells versus one set criteria, whereas the count if s formula can evaluate multiple ranges versus multiple criteria. Let's see this in action. Click in the formula bar, type equal sign count if s with no space between words, open parentheses, select your range, that's criteria range 1, which is just going to be these variances again. Now type a comma, and then we'll type in the first criterion, which in this case is going to be greater than or less than 0. We're looking for anything that is not equal to 0, so greater than or less than 0 is going to work perfectly. However, when we use greater than or less than signs, we have to enclose the sign and the corresponding number within quotation marks. I cover that in other videos, so you'll have to check that out there. Now we're going to close parentheses and hit enter. This right here is technically enough for the formula to give me the result I want. I just want it to give me the result of 6. That's going to be those 6 expenses that were either over or underspent versus our budget. But again, for the sake of this example, we're going to add another range and another piece of criteria for Excel to evaluate. So we're going to go back into the formula, type comma. Now we can enter the second criteria range. We're going to use the same variance range, D4 through D11, hit comma, and now I'm going to use something that's not going to change the result. So here I'm going to type in less than 100. Since all of these numbers in this range are less than 100, this isn't going to change the result. Again, this has to be entered within quotation marks, so I'm doing that and I'll hit enter. This formula says count if anything in this range is greater than or less than 0, and if anything in this range is less than 100. It's important to note that adding multiple criteria means that all criteria must be met in order for the cell to be counted. This is similar to an AND statement. It is not like an OR statement. The result is 6, and we can see that this makes sense because there were 6 instances where the amount spent was not equal to the amount budgeted. I'll do one last count A here just to bring it all together. Equals count A, open parentheses. I'm going to select just the names of the expenses I have listed to get a count of them. Now close parentheses and hit enter. The result of 8 tells me that the last two formulas I did, counting how many times the amount spent was exactly equal to the amount budgeted, and counting how many times the amount spent was not equal to the amount budgeted, worked as I had planned, because 2 plus 6 equals 8. I typically like to add some little check like this to make sure everything I've done makes sense. Hey guys, I hope this video was helpful and you used it for school, for work, or just for fun. If you found it helpful, please share it with your friends, and I would love to hear how you used it. So drop a comment down below and hit that like button to let me know you liked it. If you want to learn more, subscribe to my channel and check out my other Excel tutorials. Bye for now.